Hi, Craig with LeadershipMentor.com. This week I want to talk to you a little bit about dealing with difficult team members. You know, if you've been a team leader for very long, you know that we all have difficult team members from time to different degrees. And we talk a lot about the coaching approach to leading people. And so there's times when the coaching approach actually doesn't apply. And we talked a little bit about that in a post last week. But I wanted to share with you really three different situations or scenarios. So one of them would be they look and appear to be receptive of that feedback, but in reality, they go back and they just continue to do the same thing. So they told you what they wanted you to hear, but they were not going to change their behavior. So that's obviously a passive aggressive behavior. I think the next one is I reject your feedback and I don't think that there's a problem. Now in this situation, the good news is they're very upfront, and so they're going to share with you the fact that they don't agree with your assessment or your evaluation of their performance. So this one's a little bit easier to deal with. It's not passive aggressive, it's out in the open. And then finally, I welcome your feedback, but I'm unable to change. So in that coaching session, the response is very positive, but then what happens after that coaching session is that team member is just unable to make those changes. So let's take a look at these individually. So I welcome your feedback, but I'm really not going to change. So that's the passive aggressive approach that we were talking about. So I think the first thing we want to do is review the previous session, the issues and impact, observations of response. So the situation here would be that you'd want to go back and say, I know we talked a couple of weeks ago or whatever the time frame is, and I wanted to get back with you and follow up from that conversation. Remind them of the issue and impact, and this goes into our feedback sessions, but it's important that we clearly identify what the issue is in that first session, and then we also want to articulate what the impact of that behavior is. Very important that they understand really the correlation between what the issue or behavior is and then the impact of that. And then we would want to talk about the observation of response. Now in this case, the response during your first coaching session was very positive, but what happened after that was no change. So we're going to want to allow the team member to respond in order to determine if they really feel differently now, if they're willing to make that change. If they are, then simply ask for behavior changes. So we're going to ask them some open-ended questions. We're going to say, so talk to me about what you think you can do differently. You're going to look for strategies, and then finally you're going to look for timelines. So once they've identified those things that they're going to do, how they're going to do them, now you're going to pinpoint when is it that you think that you can make this change, or when do you think we should get back together and evaluate what the results are. So this only applies if there seems to be a change of heart where they now are willing to make those changes. So we wouldn't want to do this if they still appear to be resistant or even passive aggressive. So if the answer is no, if they still appear to be passive aggressive, then we really need to move to the next step. If behavior and performance does not change, then this is what's going to happen. So really important that you engage your human resource partner in this. Once you've identified this, this really moves from coaching and developing and providing feedback to the next level where you have somebody who just isn't willing to make those changes. So our next scenario is I reject your feedback and I don't think that there's a problem. Now I think of the three, this is probably the easiest one. I don't want to say easy, but maybe simplest to deal with because they're very open and you're having an honest dialogue around the fact that they don't accept your feedback. They don't accept what you've told them, what you've coached them on as an issue. And so you had this initial conversation with them, and you're really going to follow the same process that we just went through. Just because one is passive where they appear to accept it, but in reality their behavior doesn't demonstrate that. In this scenario, they're just open about the fact that they don't accept it. The result is really the same. And so you would really just proceed now with having somewhat of a conversation with them around making sure they still feel the same way. And if they do, if they still reject that and they don't accept the reality of their performance or their behavior, then you really just need to move to the next step, and that's where you would partner with your human resource person. So the last one would be, I welcome your feedback, but I'm unable to change. And obviously they're not telling you that they're not able to change. They're very receptive while you're doing the coaching Unfortunately, they have not made that change. Really the same scenario so far as the first one where they were passive aggressive. But now what we want to do in this scenario is really want to determine, is the issue really a skill or a will? And the post we did last week, we talked about skill versus will. We said that we always want to train the skill and coach the will. So in this situation, what we want to do is we want to uncover why is it that the team member was not able to make those changes. So you would start out by reviewing the initial meeting that you had with them. You would review the action items that you agreed to. And then you would allow the team member to simply assess, how do you think you've progressed since then? It's key that these things that you set in motion are very measurable. Once you have this second session, it's really important that you are able to measure what happened between our first coaching session and now. That is very easy to identify, were you able to make the changes or were you not able to make the changes? So crucial that those are very measurable. So ultimately what we want to do is uncover, is it a skill or will? So our approach is going to be very different. So if it's a skill issue and that's uncovered during this period, now you want to move to identify, what is it that this person needs to learn? Did we already try to teach or train them how to do it once or twice or even 3 times, and they just haven't been able to do this function? And if that's the case, then unfortunately, it's likely this job is not really a good fit for them. If they haven't been trained, then you would want to move and make those arrangements to get that training for them. So if it's a will issue, now you have to have an open conversation around, why is it that they're not able to do the behavior change or the performance change that you really need? And ultimately, I think what you'll find is they will uncover on their own the fact that they're just not willing to put in the effort to make that change. So I hope you found that helpful. Good luck with dealing with those difficult team members, and I hope you have a great week.